a boy in Brixton who nobody had ever thought that, would ever reach anywhere further than SW9. It's so nice, I had to name it twice. I call it Reggae Reggae Sauce, hot Reggae Reggae Sauce. I teach kids now, if you want to fulfill life, you got to get to that point where you're the best of you. And getting to the best of you means success, because then everything seems to feel better for you, and even within yourself you feel better about who you are because you've achieved something. People are not going to be buying into the sauce years and years to come. They're buying into the brand. She came over at the end of it, and she says, Levi, oh, amazing, love the sauce, love the song. And she dipped in her pocket and she whipped out a business card and she says, would you like to be a Dragon's Den?
Hi, I'm Richard Farleigh and welcome to my Business Of series produced by City AM. In this series, we explore different industries and the people who shape them, uncovering what it takes to succeed and adapt in an ever-changing business landscape. Today's episode focuses on the business of Dragon's Den, and I'm thrilled to have Mr. Levi Roots as our guest. Levi shot to fame in 2007 after appearing on Dragon's Den in its 4th series, where he secured investment for his now hugely successful Reggae Reggae Sauce. As perhaps the most successful and well-known pitch in the show's history, Levi's journey is one of the best to discuss. And in a unique twist, I was one of the Dragons, alongside Peter Jones, who invested in his business. Let's uncover what it was really like to be on Dragon's Den and how Levi has built his success since then. Hi, Levi.
Hi, Richard.
Can you believe it's been 18 years, 2007, since you were on Dragon's Den?
Well, I can believe it, because every store that I walk into it has my grandmother's sauce in there, the recipe for that, and it's just fantastic, coming from my background as a boy in Brixton who nobody had ever thought that, would ever reach anywhere further than SW9. And I go into stores in Scotland, in Wales, and wherever, I've been to Africa and I've gone into store, I've seen it in there. So it's believable now. I believe that, it is possible.
Yeah, I think I saw in one of your interviews you said you are the most famous black man in Britain who is not a footballer or a politician or something.
Who doesn't kick a ball or run fast.
Kick a ball or run fast. So that's a great quote. I don't know if it's true. It probably is true, right? But the sad thing about seeing you after 18 years is you've barely changed, and I'm look a bit different since the footage. But I think it's natural, right? I'm 64. What are you? 60?
I'm 66.
66. Yeah. Well, you're doing well.
Thank
We're
you
both doing all
very
right,
much,
aren't you? Who would have thought 18 years ago they'd be sitting here chatting?
I think success does it for you, and I think I teach kids now, if you want to fulfill life, you got to get to that point where you're the best of you, and getting to the best of you means success, because then everything seems to feel better for you, and even within yourself you feel better about who you are because you've achieved something.
From what I see, you've maintained your humbleness and your attitude to life, and you have an amazing smile, which you always, every time I see you, you have an amazing smile, and you've never stopped being genuine and sincere. But I think even one of the things I liked about you on Dragon's Den was that you'd had some failure, but you were just humble from the moment
Yes.
But can we just go back into the backstory of Levi or of Keith? I still remember that moment when Theo asked you, how did you get a cool name?
Yes, Theo said, Levi Roots, what a wonderful name. Is that your real name? And I tell you, Richard, it was that point I was just thinking to myself, please God, dig a hole in the ground and swallow me up now, because I'm going to have to admit on national TV that my name is bloody Keith.
Yeah, well, actually, my name is actually Richard Buckland Smith, and I'm Richard Bruce Farleigh, because I grew up in the care system, and my name was changed to Farleigh when I was actually born a Smith. And I identify more as a Richard Buckland Smith, because that's my sort of outback, but, it'd be a bit inconvenient to be Richard Smith.
Well, I never wanted to identify as Keith, and it was in school. I was 16 in school. I formed my first band, and I remember everyone was wanting to have a cool name to be introduced on stage, and I just hated the fact that I've been, ladies and gentlemen, introducing Keith. And then I sort of went through history and I looked up and saw that 90% of Jamaicans have Scottish names. And I kept looking in the mirror thinking that I don't look bloody Scottish.
Yes,
You know,
yeah. What's your clan?
Yeah, something has to happen. And it was through listening to reggae music and Bob Marley and seeing these great artists from Jamaica who were trying to say that, you know, you're not, you know, this slave name that you have. You need to find the true you. So I named myself Levi from the 12 sons of Jacob, and Levi was the third born.
Going back, you were born in Jamaica.
Yes.
And you didn't move here till you were, well, you moved here when you were 11.
Yes,
is that right?
I was 11. My parents were part of the Windrush generation. I was a Windrush child, and Windrush is people that came after 1948. It was a ship that was called the Windrush that was taking back soldiers that had fought in the war back to the Caribbean. And when the ship got back to the Caribbean, they found that they never had any cargo to come back to the UK. So the message was come to the UK to ask that should they, you know, get people to pay on the ship to come travel back, so that they had a cargo of people to come back to the UK.
So they paid to come back?
And they, yeah.
But on the assumption that they'd have citizenship?
They would have citizenship back here in the UK. And my parents came, that was in 1948, the same year as the NHS started. So a lot of nurses and, you know, and people that worked in hospitals came over. My parents came over in the 60s as part of that generation.
And they paid to come back? So
yeah, they paid their way to come
So
here,
it wasn't
yeah.
like in Australia they had this £10 POM where they basically
not
gave
at
free
all.
trips to
Not
Australia
at
to
all.
get people to work.
It was entrepreneurs, and I like to think of the Windrush generation as the first set of entrepreneurs, of black entrepreneurs that came from the Caribbean. Because, I mean, if you've ever seen the pictures of these people that was on that particular ship, they were dressed like amazing, ready coming to work. You know, my mom worked in the NHS for almost 50 years. You know, she was a nurse in King's College Hospital. And for them, it was sending for the children one at a time, because everybody came leaving their families back in the Caribbean, as did my family, and everyone stayed with grandma, just like me. My grandma looked after 6 of us. I was the youngest of 6, and I was the last one to come over to join my parents here in the UK at the age of 11.
So what age did they leave? What age were you?
Well, my parents left when I was 5. The scenario was every year I would see, you know, my granny in tears and a brown suitcase would arrive. And I didn't really understand what was going on, because every year the same thing would happen. I would come out from plane and I see my granny in tears, and on the other side I would see a brown suitcase. And after a while I got to realize that one of my brothers and sisters would have to be leaving. But I was happy because all I could think about was more room in the bed for me, because we slept in one massive bed together, all of us, including my grandma.
No, hang on.
Absolutely.
8 people?
7 people in one bed, all of us. And
Wow,
every year it got smaller and smaller, as finally when I came out from from eating mangoes and sugar canes in the bushes, and I saw my granny crying, and I saw the brown suitcase. And just as I was about to rub my hands together and thinking more room in the bed for me, I realized that I was the final one to come over. And I had to leave this amazing woman that was teaching me how to cook and teaching me about food and about music. And nobody had actually told me that one day I would have to leave her. And all I knew as mom, dad, cat and everything was this amazing woman, as my grandma. And finally, when I had to leave, the only thing I could remember was the stuff that she was cooking and the music that she sang, and that stayed with me throughout all my life.
You were the last child to come over?
I was the last child to come over. Couldn't read. I couldn't even spell my first name, and as we now know, it only had 5 letters.
At 11, you were 11?
I was 11 years old, and having to travel on my own in those days. I traveled on a plane on my own. But I think the most telling thing was leaving my grandma behind, because I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't really have any sort of feelings for mom and dad, so I had to build that all over again when I eventually got here. Because all I could think about was this amazing woman that was everything to me.
And what about your grandfather? Was he in your life as well?
My grandfather, yes, was left back in Jamaica as well. I never saw them again when I came over. And then my grandmother passed away when I was about 16. So maybe 5 or 6 years after me leaving her, she passed away. So I never saw her again. But it was just the memories of the food and the sauces that she used to make as this great woman in Clarendon in Jamaica that, that was a fantastic cook. That, and the thing is that I would be coming up from playing every day and seeing the house full of people, of strangers, and it was just people that would smell her amazing cooking, and they'd be coming up just eating all our food. But she was a great woman, a great singer. She sang in the Baptist church. She was a member of the choir. So I suppose music actually came, both the sauce and the cooking and everything and the music was inspired by her. Her name was Miriam, and I named my guitar after her.
Miriam, the guitar.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that lovely? That's the ultimate tribute from yourself, right? You arrived here at 11.
Yes.
So you were you're in Brixton, and this is in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And I remember in Australia watching English TV, and it was quite, openly racist. Some of the sitcoms,
absolutely.
What was it called? Love Thy Neighbour
Love
or
Thy
something,
Neighbour,
or Eddie Booth and all this kind of, it's soft racism, but it's sort of a comedy value racism.
Yeah. Not only that, it was the time of the Enoch Powell Rivers of Blood thing, where it wasn't just blacks as well, because I remember the signs when I come: no dogs, no blacks, no Irish. So it
Did
was
you actually
a
ever
massive,
see one of those?
Yes, absolutely. In the 70s, it was still around. And I think it was that joining of Caribbean people coming over that actually brought diversity to the country. Because before that, people didn't really experience having black families living next door to them. And it was the music and the food that actually helped to create that unity between the two cultures. Especially for reggae music and the food that used to be cooked. And I remember just like the scenario with my grandmother in Jamaica, where people would come round to the house because of her food. When I arrived in the UK, it was the same thing. Our white neighbors was coming around because of the type of food and the music and the house parties that used to be kept. But it was a terrible time in those days because of the racism that was happening in this country.
Right, and you went to school in Brixton.
I did, yeah.
Was the school majority white or black or Caribbean or any?
It was mixed. It was mixed. But again, one of the most poignant memory that I have in those days is of the skinheads, because in those days, in the 70s, was the time of the skinheads.
Right.
And it was difficult coming out of school and knowing that if you turn one way, it's a bunch of white guys that want to rip your head off, and I couldn't understand that because we never had racism in Jamaica. But literally, when you turn the other way, there were these amazing white people that wanted to embrace you and know about the food and about the music and this and that. So it depends on where you are and which way you turn, that you got some solace and some love from the white community that was around.
So at 11, you learned to sort of, so you gradually...
Yeah, I went into school and I had to try to fit in with everyone. But I think that trying got me into trouble, because you're trying to fit around into a square. You're not happy because of where you lived. I wasn't happy because I missed my grandmother. I wasn't happy because I wasn't like everybody else in school who had been to, primary school and kindergarten and everything. And here I was as this Jamaican child that could, barely speak English, where I was speaking like a Jamaican patois child and couldn't fit in at all. So it was the music that really saved me, because I realized that I had some kind of talent. I knew that I wanted. The only place that I felt comfortable was within music lessons in school. So I suppose I knew what I wanted to do when I eventually left. So I excelled myself with the cooking and with the music from a very early age.
Did you were you accepted by the other kids at the school?
Yes, because I think when you're a Jamaican child and you could climb a tree faster than everybody else, you can open a bottle more, without a opener, and you can do all the cool things that, that other kids can't do. But I don't think that really helped me. I think it kind of held me back, because wanting to be cool is one thing, but that gets you into trouble. And I found that being cool was the only time that I was really accepted. Because I wasn't clever in any way, but I was a cool kid, and that wasn't good for me at all.
So you sort of famously now, because you talk about it, ended up in, you spent some time in prison. So how did join those, those dots about from arriving, getting into a prison?
Yeah. So, well, again, it was trying to be cool and hanging out with the wrong people. and it got me in the wrong place. I really believe that when I had my sentence then, it was as Keith, because I wasn't fully Levi Roots yet. It was while I was inside serving the sentence that I became Levi, because I met my first mentor, a young lady that came into the prison as a drama teacher. Her name was Teresa. She came in that couple times a week, and she was the first one to spot and said to me that you're not Keith, you are Levi. And if you're going to want to be successful, you have to embrace the talent that you have, and that will take you on to a different place. And at first, it was a bit difficult for me to try to change from where you are, that got you there in the first place. This kid was trying to be too cool and didn't take my music seriously. And it was the mentorship from Teresa that actually allowed me to embrace who I am and make the changes from what got me there to this new person that came out and never looked back.
That's fantastic. It's the same, you kind of, growing up in the care system, you kind of latch on to for me it was some school teachers and someone from the church, and then later adult friends who played chess that I played. But you sort of need one person can have and I do some charity stuff for young people. It's that one person that can just make you believe in yourself, because you just have such low self-esteem.
Yeah.
If you're a slow learner or whatever you are.
Absolutely. She threw the full works of Shakespeare at me one day and said to me,
"That's pretty heavy for
absolutely
in the Old English."
Yeah, and she threw it and she says, "Read that," and I read the whole thing, the complete works of Shakespeare, of over a year. And she taught me the old famous Brutus line, where no one loved Brutus in those days, but she was saying to me that, it's great. Said the tide in the affairs of man, taking out the floods, will lead to fortune. But omitted, all the days of your lives could be deemed in shallows and in miseries, but on such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves, or lose our ventures. Now, wow. I think the reason why she was telling me that, I've got to take the current when it serves, as what Brutus was saying, that, when your time comes, you've got to grab it. I think it's a great entrepreneurial kind of, mantra, really, saying that your chance come, you've got to grab it. And she was saying, my chance has come because I was in this place, I call it at Her Majesty's pleasure back then. Yes. You're in this place in prison where it's your tide has come. If you can't take the chances that you get to be able to in a space where you can have a great function, and not have the whole world that's teaching you something else to take away your focus. She was saying this is your opportunity to make that change and become somebody completely different.
How long were you in prison?
4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
To get a 4-year sentence, you have to do something pretty serious, don't you?
Yeah, it is. And your environment where you live, doesn't protect you from that, But I've always said that, not because I was on Dragon's Den and yourself and Peter turned me into who I am overnight. I've always said that I was always me. But the opportunity for someone like yourself and for Peter to see a young Levi Roots back then, living in southwest London in an area where it was a no-go here in Brixton in the 70s and 80s where I grew up, there was no chance of that. And I said that now about young kids who are stuck into this knife and gun crime that is, taking over the UK streets. I said there are many young kids like myself who's there who, given the opportunity to meet a mentor like yourself and somebody that can literally change their lives, you would find that there's a lot more Levi Roots type kids in these local areas, because I was one of them. But if I didn't have this first mentor that I have to help me to change my life, I would never have gone on to meet yourself and to meet Peter within the den. So I think it's all about mentorship in that kind of way to make that change.
So leading up to Dragon's Den, so you got the source and you play music, and did you have a day job?
No, I was into music all my life.
But being into music and making a living at different...
Well, yeah, but music was always my life.
Yeah.
When I left school, I started off as an engineer. I did my first few years working for a company called Selby Engineering. My brother got me a job there, and I was doing quite well.
After leaving
school? But I think the music kept calling. You know, I was working and I was doing well, but I never felt comfortable. I wanted to go on tour. I wanted to be singing songs. I wanted to be expressing what I saw my grandmother did, you know, was to express herself through her music. And I gave up the job and I joined a sound system. And I went on tour from then, and for all my, I even still, now I still think of myself as not as an entrepreneur. Yes, I am, yes, a businessman. But, you know, when I've got music in my hand, that's when I really feel the true Levi Roots. I feel me with the music.
So just leading up to you coming on to going on to Dragon's Den. So, so you started the sauce, now it was your grandmother's sauce,
Yeah.
although that's been debated.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
might get to that later.
Yeah.
But so you were selling. So to get onto the sauce and onto Dragon's Den, you were selling the sauce for 15 years at Notting Hill.
Yeah, I was selling it for a long time. Well, not actually selling the sauce. It was Levi Roots on sale, because I think our stall was popular. First of all, we gave it the name of the restaurant. And people were coming because, you know, I would be having my music, I would have my sound system, and I was merging the music and the food together. And the stall, the restaurant, got really popular over the years, that people would just come, you know, just because they knew they were getting much more than just buying some jerk chicken. They were getting, you know, this Rastaman that was telling stories of his grandmother and, you know, and singing songs and playing dub plates on the sound system. And it was really, really successful. But it wasn't until around about 2005, 2004, a few years before Dragon's Den, that I realized that, you know, people were actually loving the food, but they were more into myself as Levi Roots, the character. And that's when the sauce became popular, because I changed up the recipe back then.
So the store was a pop-up just for the
Yeah, just Carnival, yeah.
Carnival.
Once a year, every August, end of August, you know, I would turn up, I would have the same guitar and I would be there playing, you know, and cooking at the same time.
And in the bottles, you'd have was it called Reggae Reggae Sauce?
No, Reggae Reggae Sauce came around once I'd written the song. I wrote the song in the end of 2005, just to give that expression of what the sauce was about and what was in it, and merging the music and the food together. And we did our first batch. I cooked my first batch in my flat in Brixton, and nobody brought it. It was a disaster because I actually thought it was a great idea to try to sell the sauce in a Caribbean area, but not realizing that nobody has a right to a market. You have to go out and find your market. So it was through failure of nobody buying it that I recognized that. But hang on, people at the carnival loved it. And I figured out that, you know, through trial and error, that it wasn't Caribbean people that was coming to my stall. You know,
Yes.
It was just mainstream people. So I decided to take the sauce out, you know, to the public. And we decided to go to, in the UK, anywhere that had Shire at the end of it. Because we know there's no
posh.
Rastaman like me in the posh areas, you know. So we did a year and a half in the Shires, not selling it at all local.
Who's we? You got
My kids, my children and myself and a couple of friends.
and just load them up in the back of a car or something?
Yeah,
and
in a
drive
van.
off?
You know, we'd have a van. We put the jerk pan in the van, and we put the sauces in the van, and we went into the Shires.
And
all
sorry,
day.
it was Reggae Reggae Sauce then? Or just,
Yes, I'd written the song.
So you wrote the song. What was
wrote
it
the
called
song.
before Reggae Reggae Sauce?
It was just jerk sauce.
Not much
It
of a
never had
name.
any. There's no marketing.
So you tried to
for it,
write a
yeah.
song called Jerk Sauce. It didn't work.
Well,
or
no,
something?
I knew then. I think when the song came around because I wanted to pay homage to my grandmother and her music as well, and put the two things, the music and the food together. And when you're that way inclined and you got to write a song, you know, I think the hook line has to come really first. So even though we never had a name for the sauce, but reggae music was what I did. And I was there one day and I picked up the guitar and I just thought, I'd just write something really easy, which, because I think most its songs, the chorus is the most important thing, you know, the most memorable part of it. And I wanted to merge reggae and jerk sauce together. So I was like, Put some music in the food for me. Give me some reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. It's so nice, I had to name it twice. I call it reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. Just like my baby, it is the perfect delight. It's got some peppers and some herbs and spice. Me want some reggae, reggae sauce. Hot reggae, reggae sauce. So nice with your fried chicken. Make burgers finger licking.
You must have
I remember your face on the show when I got to that.
I looked at the footage, I was tapping my hand. But, you know, just when you're playing that, you know, I wanted to clap, but then some voice told me white men just clap, you know, like, and I'd probably get the beat wrong, you know, so I didn't want to clap along to it.
Well, in the Shires, when I was singing it, when I got to that verse, I was so nice with your fried chicken. Normally, you know, everybody claps when I'm selling it and people buys the sauce. But there's this one lady in the audience. I think I was in Carmarthenshire, and she came over at the end of it, and she says, Levi, oh, amazing, you know, love the sauce, love the song. And she dipped in her pocket and she whipped out a business card and she says, would you like to be in Dragon's Den?
You serious?
Yes. And I was like,
wow.
What the hell is this Dragon's Den?
Yeah.
Right. She was the producer. It was one of the producers.
Just by chance, she
was
there,
by
or was
chance,
she scouting?
She was just by chance. You know, I was in her hometown, and she whipped out the card. She says, "Would I like to be on Dragon's Den?" And I was like, "What the hell is this Dragon's Den?" I'd never seen the show. I didn't even heard of it. But I was thinking that I hope it's not like I'm a celebrity get me out of here, because a Rasta man cannot go and be eating kangaroo testicles and stuff. So I was telling her
I'm
that.
Australian, I don't eat that either.
So I was telling her that I'm not interested in this, whatever this Dragon's Den is. I'm just happy you're singing the song and it's straight. If you want, you can buy some sauce. And she says to Levi, please take my business card. If somebody do tell you about Dragon's Den. So I took the business card and put it in my pocket. And I went home, we came back to London, and I went home, and my daughter normally packs away my business card that I collect, you know, on these Shire trips. No, she puts them into this thing that we had. And when she saw the blue BBC card with the lady's name on there, she was jumping up and down, and she's like, Dad, it's Dragon's Den, where'd you get this from? And I'm like, what the hell is this Dragon's Den? And it was my daughter that explained to me what Dragon's Den was. But then they said to me, you know, Dad, whatever you do, don't think you're gonna go on that show and sing no bloody song, because it's about business and enterprise. But I thought it was a great chance for me to go and express who I was, you know, and not to sell the sauce, but to express Levi Roots. And that's why I accepted, because they were telling me about the number stuff that I'm going to get, you know, really, really in trouble with the numbers.
Did you do a rehearsal before you went on?
Yes, for the song, for the BBC.
Oh, no, but not a question and answer
type. Not at all, because I didn't care about that. I knew that if the Dragons didn't invested, because I knew what happened at the carnival with the song and with my expression of who I am, and what happens in the Shires when I go into the Shires and I play the song and I sell the sauce. So I was thinking that all I need is a chance to go and to express Levi Roots. And if I did it in the right way, that even if the Dragons didn't invest, I was sure that the millions watching on TV perhaps would have got the sense of what I was trying to do.
Well, you know, I think, you know, because we've talked since you went on the show, obviously 18 years ago, but I think, you know, when you were talking about going on with the guitar, and didn't you break it, so people may not realise, just from the other side, because we're talking about Dragon's Den, the other side, as a dragon, it's quite a real show, in the sense that, at least when I was on it, it's quite a real show in that you're always asking the directors, you know, what's on next? What's on next? You're having lunch, like, tell us what's on next, give us a clue.
Yeah.
And you'd walk in and it'd be covered up. It was very real in that sense. There was never a clue. They would not tell you the first thing about it. This is a source, this is music, that you don't know anything. You really sit down.
Well, that's a great point,
So
Richard.
we're sitting there waiting for you to come on, or waiting for the next one to come on. But hadn't you been waiting a couple of
days? It was real drama, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because, and I'm glad you're here, because sometimes when I tell people, they don't really believe this part. I was in the room, and I was the only black person within that day coming in. So I was thinking to myself that, you know, damn, am I in the wrong place? I'm going to be this black guy that goes onto the show with a bloody guitar and a song called Reggae Reggae Sauce. And no one's going to invest.
Keith with Reggie.
So the producer came over and she says, oh, Levi, you're going on soon. Can you get yourself ready? So I picked up the guitar and I started to tune up the guitar. And bang, one of the strings broke. And I was just like, you know, saying to the producer, I really don't feel like I want to go on. She says, try again. So I put the second string on that I had, tune up the guitar again, bang, the second string popped as well. So I was saying to them, look, I don't want to go on. You know, this is a omen. I shouldn't have been here really, and I feel like I want to go home. And she said, the producer says that they'll send for a next set of strings. So I remember there was a runner on the show who was great friends with me at the moment. She lives in Scotland, actually. Her name is Michelle. She was a runner on Dragon's Den. And Michelle went all the way from London Bridge, where it was being filmed, to Kennington to get the third E string, bottom E string for me. And she came back. I restrung up the guitar again, and it still broke. So I was just like really saying to the producers, I don't want to go on. This is telling me something that I'm going to become the most embarrassing thing ever on Dragon's Den, because I've decided, you know, to shift the mold and to be singing a bloody song. You know, and the lady said to me, no, Levi, please, you know, if you can make it work, you know, if you can make 5 strings on the guitar work, then, you know, you'll be great on the show. Because I think they were just thinking about the production, really. They weren't thinking about, you know, this guy's going to be something really on the show. So, yeah, so I said, okay, fine, you know, because she was really, convincing. And so if anybody's out there, if you watch Dragon's Den, and you will see I only have got 5 strings on the guitar.
Oh, so you only had 5?
Because the third one broke.
And had you sat there a day before waiting? Because some people wait 2 days to get on.
No, I was there. And I strung it up again. It broke for the 3rd time. And she said, look, you know, I was the last one to go on that day. I was the final one. And I said, okay, I'll chance it. I'll see if 5 strings will work. And my name was called. In those days, it was a staircase. If you remember staircase, and I was at the bottom of the staircase, and she's counting 1, 2, 3. Off you go. And I went up and I played. I couldn't even look into you guys' face because I'd never watched the show. I'd refused. My kids were saying to me, you know, Dad, you need to look up Dragon's Den. And I was like, I don't want to see anything at all to do with the show. I don't want to be beaten before I got there, because everybody was really telling me that I shouldn't have taken the guitar. And I was just thinking that I don't want to be beaten before I got there by looking at other people getting numbers wrong and that sort of stuff. So the first time I saw you guys, Richard, was when I actually came up the stairs, and I saw yourself and Peter, you know, and Duncan and Deborah and Theo. I had no experience of what I was going into, because I was so confident that I just need to be me. And I didn't want to be beaten before I got there by filling up my head with a lot of stuff that got there. So singing the song, and when I got to that verse, so nice with your fried chicken, that's the first time my head came up just to see what the song was doing. And I saw you on the left, and I saw you tapping away.
Clapping, but
and that was, for me, that was the moment that I knew that the song was doing its
So me tapping my fingers changed your life.
Absolutely, totally, because I think it's the same experience when I'm on stage performing. You look into the audience, and if they're not enjoying it, then you know perhaps that you need to change a number and sing another number. But I saw you tapping on the desk, and had this amazing sort of look on your face, thinking, I don't know whether it's what the is this guy doing on the show, but it was the moment that I thought that you know.
Well, that song stuck in my had that song stuck in my head for like a week after. But you know, the experience that you went through was pre-designed. Like, from what I understand, being on the one of the Dragons, was that coming up, we were not allowed to see the set beforehand, deliberately, almost to heighten the tension. Right? So you come up those stairs, and you literally, it was the same for all those contestants, come up the stairs and literally, and not only see us, but all the production crew around, all the lighting and other people watching. You know, it must be scary as hell. Like I always felt sorry for people coming on. I was nervous sitting in the chair. Like, I felt imposter syndrome. I was so, you know, a bit like you. I didn't really speak until I was 10. So I was like having, you know, half the time I was really nervous. You know, when I watch it back now, I know I'm nervous. But, you know, it was an intimidating sight. You've got to come and stand on your little black mark that's marked on there and stand there. But and I've watched you, and you barely skip a beat. But it's funny, if you had have watched the show beforehand, you probably would have had your numbers right.
Yeah.
And ironically, it was getting the numbers wrong. I mean, hopefully anyone watching this has seen it. But you were 1,000 to 1 out on your numbers.
Well, the reason for that is because I had told my kids that I'm not going to take any numbers to Dragon's Den. I literally promised them that all I'm going to do, I'm going to go and perform the song, and I'm feeling that that's going to be well, and no numbers. But on the morning before I went, it's that last minute when you're always thinking to yourself, well, maybe I need to. So I had some numbers written down before, which was, I didn't even know what I was doing. I had written it down. And I stuck it away in my pocket just as a sort of a fail-safe moment. But I still said that I'm not going to take it out. But it was when you had said that, do I have any sort of numbers or whatever to prove the sale or something?
Well, you pulled out, for a Dragon, you're on the other side, I'm seeing someone come up and should I tell you now, I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but you were, on Dragon's Den, there's a certain number of ones which the producers, directors know that are not going to make it. It's just pure for entertainment value. And you were one of those.
Yes, I can imagine. Yeah.
Purely,
well, I was there singing
they expect like the song will come out, that'll make
yeah.
some cut, and that'll be that. And so you were purely for entertainment value. But when you came on, the fact that you were, and I've got my pad here, actually probably from 18 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I know, it's got written here. None of it makes much sense, but you were number 56 presentation for that series, did 74, and on that day, God knows how many, right? But a whole lot. And as I say, that's, you're the last one on the day. It's just nice to get one to finish on, then we can go home. Yeah. Half the time we're like, can we come home? And anyway, that's, it doesn't make much sense. But when I watched it back,
I'm out.
There's something where it's got you or the source. And somewhere here, it's got you or the source. I realised something that I'd been missing and that the others maybe had missed was that, yeah, you can take that. In fact, someone requested a signed copy of that, and I sent that to them for a charity or something, a signed copy of the notes with amazing. You. But I realised, like when you're out on those numbers, and I'm like, because I'm used to leaders being Australian, and I'm like, this is 2.5 million leader or 2.5. But the piece of paper was very important, because when you're backing a business as a Dragon, you have nothing. Dragons get knocked a lot, but when you think of the situation they're in, it's your own money. It is your own money. Yeah. You lose money. I lose money on a lot of those things, right? But you have no advantage. I didn't know you from Adam, right? You can't do any research on the person. I can't research the source. So that you gave me the source. It tastes okay to me, but you'd have to do a wine tasting. I'd have to have like 10 of the sources, and I'd want to know what source is sold and what's the normal markup on them. You want to do some research, and so you want to ask the audience or ring a friend. None of that's available. I've literally got to make a decision on the spot. And so it's not as easy as it looks, And in hindsight, everything is, I missed out on Trunky. I don't know if you know Trunky, the little suitcase.
Remember, yeah.
And I missed out. I tried to invest, but didn't offer quite enough. And people say, well, look, they missed that. It's measuring the immeasurable. But when you started talking about you had a big plus on your side. You had this order. And an order is sort of independent verification. Someone else, apart from Levi or apart from us making a judgment, has said this source has value. That's good enough. And it kind of wasn't quite what you said it was. It was 2.5 million litres, and then after that it all gets a bit blurry. It wasn't an order, it was an agreement that if you make this, and then you wanted 25,000 so you could make it, for this order, but the order wasn't guaranteed. Yeah. So someone was reading that, and then I'm going, hang on, litres, there's 65 million people in the country. How much is every person going to drink of this stuff? Like, that cannot be right. But so, but what was unusual apart from your song, was that when I sort of pointed that out, you're at 1,001 in your numbers. I think even then you changed to another number or something. You said 250. I don't know. You jumped around. But normally that would be the death moment.
Yeah.
Normally, for other contestants, you're wrong on your numbers. The cameras would all, go right, and you'd perspire, and then you'd be like, and we'd be like, off, get off.
How dare you waste our time?
And you'd be kicked off. And you were just like, any other questions? So it was just a phenomenal. And your reaction to when someone said, is your name Keith? And you're like, well, I'm actually Levi. Somewhere along there, it dawned on me that exactly what you wanted, maybe, that you were the product, not the source. Yeah. I mean, the source tasted fine to me, but you were the product, and this guy, people are going to like this guy. Yeah.
Well, for me, the telling moment where you're concerned, Richard, on the show is when I remember you specifically. It's about honesty, actually, because you said to me that, do I think that I would need some help to do with it if you were to invest. And I think it's that moment when I think about where I'm from and if I was still the old me, how I would have answered. I wouldn't have answered how I answered then, because I actually says, yes, I would need some help. Because I think the rude boy in me, the street kid in me, wouldn't allow me to have said that. It would have allowed me to say that, yeah, man, of course, no, the numbers are right, you know, and try to argue it within some. But I think it just took me back to what Teresa had said to me. Take the Brutus speech. Take the current when it serves, or lose your ventures. That was in my head. I got to take this chance when it's come right now and be honest about everything, you know, that's been said. So when you said to me that, do I think that I would need some help, you know, as in the business, and me having to put my hand up and admit that, yes, you know, I maybe can sing the song and write the song and sell the sauce, but on the business end of it, I would need some help. I think that was perhaps the most telling part.
It's the fact that you'd had some failure and some struggle, you know, and you weren't, apart from the order, you'd tried and you hadn't had any success, and it was also the way that you owned that, and then and again, like, because a lot of the inventions come on, they're looking for help from the dragons on the business side, but a lot of the dragons' questions, not mine, but were basically, what's your third year gross margin forecast? All this stuff that an inventor wouldn't know anything about. So some of the questions were a bit silly. But anyway, both Peter and I, luckily saw through that, but I still didn't know if it was going to succeed. I think you were shocked when I rewatched the footage. I think you were a bit like, you wanted 20%, all of it, and we said, well, what about this deal? And you're like, hell yeah.
Yeah, because I never knew what Dragon's Den was. I didn't know, I think if I'd watched the show, I wouldn't have gone on. If I'd watched it, I think it was the audacity that I had to believe in myself. And I say to kids now, never undermine who you are by comparing yourself with someone else. It's because we're all different why each of us is special. So I would never want to set my goals by what other people deem important, because I can only be me.
And would that be advice for other people going on Dragon's
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you have to be your authentic self rather than pretend to be someone else. Because I think that honesty of me going in and holding my hand up and say, yeah, maybe rubbish at numbers, but I'm confident that this sauce is absolutely amazing, and I'm confident that I can sell and front this sauce, because I think people are not going to be buying into the sauce years and years to come. They're buying into the brand of who you are and the integrity of the brand of who you are. And I was confident that because of I'd now been chipped away and honed in to be this honest person by Teresa, my original mentor, I felt like I was now ready for people to invest in me. And even when you said that you're going to take a punt, you'll take a gamble, for me, it was the Holy Grail of somebody taking a gamble in that honesty of me putting my hand up and says that, yes, I'm going to need some help in that.
Well, honesty is a big part. If you're doing business with someone, trusting them, it is so important. Everything, you can have contracts and everything, but you've got to trust someone, haven't you? Otherwise, and I think there was that trust. I remember the moment then we shook hands, and then I always stepped, because I invested with Peter, I invested a few things with Peter, I'd always move away quite quickly from the screen because he's 6'4" and I'm 5'8" with a good pair of shoes, So I would always, I didn't want to look like Peter's son, so I would always duck away from it. But I think you said something to me about if I went to Brixton tonight, I'd be the most popular whitey.
Well, you have become, and as I says, that moment is now steeped within history, and I'm very proud of it. That every year it comes back, people vote, that my pitch, as the best. Wherever I go into schools, I do a lot of schools now. I go into schools. The story is told in school. It's one of the most popular stories about business, in business classes. That's where it's come. So I'm very proud, of that.
I think you should be, and you haven't, you are the real you. I mean, it doesn't need me to say that, but you don't seem to have changed. How do you find money and fame? You don't seem to have changed.
No, I embrace it. I really do. As I say, you get to the point where you know the public are interested in you as a person, so you're comfortable with who you are. You know, wherever I go around the UK now, you know, it's just amazing to see how that appearance has just really inspired so many people. My life is just completely changed from anything from, you know, working with the king and you know, and his stuff and going to the palace scores of time where I'm even noted in places like that. When I think of where I'm coming from, the two doesn't really fit. But like I said, don't compare yourself with anybody else. As long as you are you, you know, you're doing the right thing. And I would never want to change. I think that same me, you know, that struggled in those early days and the me who I am now, there's still a part of that. Because for me to go on the den and play a song on there, it is that Brixton type of hustling guy that actually allowed me to do that. So I never tried to take away the two together, but it's being the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
I can say that was the secret of mine. It's been a great journey of mine, and still a very proud one, and still continues.
Well, what's great for me
inspire.
is not, you know, just the success of Reggae Sauce, but that actually that you're out there changing people's lives and, you know, really helping and giving something back. You know, it is fantastic that you're doing that. And
yeah, well, I got to think about who's going to play you in my movie coming up.
Yeah, so the movie's coming along?
Yeah, the movie's coming along good. As a matter of fact, we've got the Hollywood star who's playing me. He's coming over here next week. We were in Jamaica, you know, some months ago together, just so that he get the feel of who I am. He flew in from LA. And we spent some time in Jamaica, going back to my roots, you know, for him to see Clarendon, where my granny's from, and see my family out there, and get to really feel of how he's gonna play my character. So it's really inspirational. I'm smiling because, again, the audacity of ever thinking that, you know, the possibility of a movie being made about my life is not something that I dare to think about, but it is real. And
well, it has. You have a lot of, you know, as you say, going back to the Windrush, going separated from your parents, and then from your grandmother, having all the siblings, being in one bed, you know, and then coming on TV show, or, you know, scraping around at Notting Hill. I mean, it is a fantastic story.
Well, it's everyone's story, you know. I think there's a bit of everyone there, even those who are successful. I mean, it will be about you. You know, as well too, it'd be about Peter and everybody else that was in my life to help me to get to where I am today. So the story just keeps building, and not just about my life, but about the young people now. As I says, there are many young people now who are looking at my stories in school and hoping to make that journey in a different way, yes, but just to make that journey to become the best of themselves and make something of their lives.
I wonder, you know, I mean, speaking of racism, do you think it would have worked in another way if you'd have been a middle-aged white guy like me? If you would have worked, maybe it was actually. Do you think it could have been having the culture and the history could have been as part of the story?
Absolutely. I don't think success is about color in any way. You know, success and the divide and the difference between making it and not making it. There isn't any sort of colorism in that kind of way. You are who you are. But I think that the fantastic stories, you know, and the ones that we all love, is when it's got a twist to it and it seems more surreal than anything else. And I think that's what movies are made about. It's not made about, you know, the people that you would see that they would have made it anyway. It's those who have gone through adversity, and you know, just like the majority of the people around the country who perhaps would never have a chance of, whether black or white, you know, to get to that point where they become, you know, somebody that a film has been made of or what have you. But it doesn't have anything to do about colour. It's just who you are and your backstory.
Well, fantastic. It's lovely to chat to you after 18 years. And as I say, you haven't changed a bit. Unfortunately, I'm 18 years older. You look like the same person. But lovely. And it's nice to, you know, just to how it changed, not just your life, but a lot of other people's lives. Yeah. Fantastic.
And I want to say thank you to you, Richard, you know, from the bottom of my heart. I really do. Because without you taking that punt, you know, that word as you use on Dragon's Den, I wouldn't be here right now. You know, so I've always thought to myself, if I could have 4 people at a dinner table for me, they would be, firstly, my granny would be there cooking the food. Secondly, Bob Marley would be there. because I played football with the great man when he was here in my musical days in Battersea
Wow.
Park. So I got to know him, and he inspired my name and everything like that. So he would be there doing the music. But at the top of the table, I would have you.
Wow.
I would have Peter. Because we can't forget that Peter has been a rock with me, you know, throughout all the years, and he still is. We've become such a great team and such a great friend. So I would have both of you at the head of the table.
Thank you. Well, what tends to happen on Dragon's Den, you know, because when you co-invest, it doesn't make sense for two people to lead an investment. So one, and in this case it was Peter, and he did a fantastic job. And I think I got an egg cooker on another one, which didn't happen in the end for various reasons. But Peter was the one who, you know, and got it into Sainsbury's so quickly, and it was the biggest selling sauce within a month or two, wasn't it?
It was, and yeah, I'll never forget that, because again, people always say to me that, what is it? Is it getting the cash, you know, is the most important thing? Yes, it's one thing, but I always says learning how to handle the cash is perhaps the most important.
You mean personally or as a business?
Personally, as well as a business as well, because I think going back to about young people, they always want to think that, oh, if I can only get some money, I'll be able to start my business. But that's only just started, because it only opens that first door. Because now, 18 years later, and I look back of all the stuff that's gone, including that first order from Sainsbury's, who I remember we went to Sainsbury's, and Justin King, the chief of Sainsbury's, was, you know, having a chat, and he said, "Oh, Levi, you know, saw Dragons, and it's absolutely fantastic, and I like to make a nice little order of the sauce." And I left my kids doing the sauce on that same day, and we were making 67 bottles every time we made the perfect recipe of my grandmother's inspired sauce. So all I could think of is when Justin is saying he'd like to make a nice little order. I was just thinking that, please God, don't let him order anything over 67 bottles. Justin King came out of it and he says, "Levi, could you please deliver 250,000 bottles of the sauce?"
You're like, kids.
I get the whip out to the kids like that. But it's, as you said, is knowing what you do after that original success that moves up. And it was just a great thing that we just thought of, outsourcing the brand.
Outsourcing the sauce. Yes, that was clever.
The sauce. I like
I'm a big fan of outsourcing. Yeah, you can use that. But and then you just sit back and, I mean, it's easier than it sounds, but you sit back and collect the royalty.
Absolutely.
And then you can't lose any money. You know, I'm friends with some professional sports people who they want to license their name and they're going to invest. I'm like, you can only ever make money. They pay you for your name and that's it. You know, and in a way that was a perfect, you know, which is something I advocated.
Because I would have to say to Justin that you'll have to wait a few years until I build a factory and then I could deliver 250,000. So it was just a great way.
And I think they sold as much in a week as they thought they sold in a year.
It was a matter of 3 weeks that Justin King called me up for the second time now and said to me, "Levi, and he couldn't even pronounce reggae. He said, Reggie sauce. Your Reggie sauce is outselling Heinz tomato ketchup." It was just a surreal moment, you know, for me. And having going into Sainsbury's and taking my mom with me and buying a bottle and going up to the cashier and she's there, you know, taking the thing and she nearly fell off her chair. But it's those magical moments that will always stick with me.
That must be nice when you walked in the store and actually saw it. It's like when you write a book and you see it. You know, it must be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's magical moments for me back then, and I still pinch myself now, even though I know it's real. But every now and again, when I think back of going up and you know, seeing yourself and tapping on the desk and then that smile on your face, it always makes me smile.